So a year ago, maybe just under, I did an update on my open table game that I play on Discord. I will put an invite that will eventually expire in the description. And yeah, let's do a 2-year anniversary because it's just over 2 years and it's just over 40 sessions. We're at 41 sessions at the moment. This is just on the Discord. This is where I keep all the records, time records, XP records, treasure records for stuff that hasn't been banked yet. And yeah, we currently have, I think we've had, I don't know, something like 14 players total, of whom 8 are currently regular. That doesn't mean they make every session, of course. It just means that they play regularly and have played in the last, couple of months. They each have up to 3 characters. They have character stables because people are busy training or people are going elsewhere, and because sometimes jobs on the job board are potentially time pressured. They need to split forces. I guess I'll just talk about, I haven't rewatched the last one, so I don't know how I did it or if this is anything like it. But yeah, we've done several adventures now. 41 sessions sounds like a lot. In one way, we play twice a month now. In one way, it's not very much because they are relatively short sessions. Like I find, especially online, I find like really pushing it. 3 hours is my maximum. These are usually really 2-hour 15 sessions, something like that. Enough to get a few things done, but they're not enormously long. So if you want to think in terms of the classic Gary Gygax session, which might be 4 to 6 hours long, think of, we've played 20 sessions or something. We've done 9 adventures, I would make it. The first, which we certainly would have talked about last time, would have talked about the spring patrol, the kind of opening patrol, clearing the road and bringing some wagoners back, and the Tywelyn homestead. Probably what has happened since is actually the majority of those adventures have at least finished, but that we've done a few different things, and one party has actually gone off to near Waterdeep, though we haven't done. We only did like 2 sessions with that. That is so far ahead that we moved back to kind of catch up. So this group here, Midday 13 Flame Wall, Silverwisp Swamp, with these characters, is up in the north. And I don't know if if they'll then, after having done this, whether the players want to push out. But that's so little of the way in, I won't really say much about that. They've gone to get some magic reagent flowers, and then there is a party at Rock Island Tower, which is it is on an island in the Big River near Daggerford, which is where our party is based. They're members of the militia. They're the kind of adventuring component rather than the average foot soldiers. They're the adventuring component, and they go and do special jobs. They're problem solvers, and they are there. And then there's a few other people, like Hemnes is just, I think he's training, or he's preparing to train. I think he's not quite at the right XP level, but he's just spare. And Sabrita here is training, so she is ahead of time. As are Birdie and Robin. So you've got some people training, you've got some people spare, you've got parties in different places. So what have we done since the last time? As I said, I don't entirely remember, but we will have finished the ruined temple of a Monitor and an adventure in the Lizard Marsh to retrieve from a black dragon who had stolen an elemental themed altar. This one was, I think, water themed, a fire themed one maybe, or an air themed one. That had been owned by a local elven nobleman, was smashed. This one was stolen. An old paladin and Lord of Lorfindar, the elf, sent the party. That was one mission they could follow up, and they chose to send the party to investigate. And the most memorable thing there, this was there's a bit of a wilderness section. There was one small dungeon. I was adapting some adventure material, and then there's this dungeon, the Ruined Temple, and it ended up with them negotiating with a black dragon, which was it was interesting because the party, with having like a bunch of second levels, and I think 1/3 level or something. You know, it's a low-level adventure, and I think it's meant to be, but they fighting diseased lizard men, bunch of traps. They pushed their luck a bit and did well, and had a couple of walking wounded by the end, but negotiated with a black dragon. They had rescued and found its egg. In fact, by the time they got there, it hatched. Xerxes, it was named, and Xerxes actually, I think, was a useful thing for the party because it was being loyal to the party, you know, having impressed somewhat upon them, but trading the baby for the altar and leaving the dragon in peace. That is obviously, we know there is an adult black dragon who, along with that, apparently a mate and a scion off in the swamp. That could be a future thing that may be relevant. We did the first part of a dungeon I designed, the Bowshot Caves. An interesting thing here was that this was one of those things. There's 2 adventures on this list where there's some time limit or time effect. So with this one, I had it that because it was an initial, I'll go to the jobs list in a second, but it was an initial job and they didn't go after it for ages, like for over a month. And so I was like, okay, so orcs have, the migrating orcs they've met various times, who have gone up to the mountain at Ilafan. And beyond, you know, there are various orcs massing in different places. Some of the migratory orcs have set up a base here, like a watch post. And that meant that rather than having just wandering in and being the first to claim it, they had to fight their way in. And then they kind of pushed further in, and they did a bunch of the top level. They didn't go any deeper. They did lose a character, though. Actually, I have a small graveyard section here there's been 4 dead characters, and Dirk was slain by a beetle. This was because one player thought that probably the beetle would be fine to defeat. I forget what kind of beetle it was, but it's a giant beetle, and yeah, it killed poor old Dirk. None of these characters who died actually have been incredibly, to be fair, incredibly experienced. You know, you've got one who got a bunch, I think got some treasure XP as a share, so she was on quite a lot. But yeah, 4 players have seen characters die. This was a character who ended up being spare and therefore was shared. Blood Ooze killed him, and the weird half orcs, and that was in the Lizard Marsh. The Beetle was in the Bowshot Caves, and yeah, Aloysius was killed near a place called Crow Hold. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah, so I had this timing mechanism, and then they kind of found some animals, they fought some orcs, they found some other weird things, and then they found that some sort of funerary complex had been opened up, and there were undead there. They went down a level, actually. I think they rested, then went down a level, and investigated a bit, and there's some classic tomb tricks and stuff. But in one section there was some sort of demon who was then gating in other demons. There's a debate about how gating can happen, area of dispute in the rules in AD&D, and yeah, they retreated from that. Thankfully, those guys were held off by some sort of ward, and they were like, we'll report back. We've investigated. That's what we're being paid to do. The most memorable thing actually about the Lizard Marsh adventure, I forgot to say, was meeting an NPC, a militiaman who was like, oh, I'll come and help you at a fort out near the Lizard Marsh. They're like, yeah, we'll take another militiaman. It turned out that in some way this militiaman was a traitor or something, and right near the end of their journeys, someone woke up. I did give them a chance to wake and hear, like a surprise check. But yeah, on her watch, Meechan was like, oh, I'd take watch, as she normally would, and then stole the water altar, or rather broke it open and took something from inside it and left and fled. In fact, turned invisible and disappeared. And this has been memorised by the party in their Book of Grudges, much as Galadon, the gnome, who was the ally of the Duergar and Zavarts in the Llewellyn Homestead adventure, has been memorised and put on a Book of Grudges-like list for having colour sprayed them and captured them. They negotiated their way out of that. I think I did talk about that last time, but yeah, they negotiated their way out of that one, actually, albeit by giving up a map of some of the entrances to Ilafan, to the Duergar, which again may turn out to be important later. They then went along with this party going north, they then went to the east of Daggerford, fairly near Daggerford, rather than all the way hundreds of miles north to Waterdeep, and went to aid Crail Hold. I actually based this adventure on a Dungeon Magazine adventure. But yeah, it was a siege story eventually, but I added stuff to it, and they started because they were both investigating the orcs who had been raiding the area, and when asking about the local area, there was a destroyed monastery of Ilmater, a god of kind of virtuous heroic suffering, and they went there to see if there's anything useful there. While they're scouting out stuff, and well, they killed some orcs there. Now, this was because this was ended up in a siege scenario. They did consider abandoning it and going home. They decided to stay. Obviously, if they'd gone home, that would have been fine as well. Because the question was, could they actually survive it? They did. The garrison was very, very thinned down, despite them having got some reinforcements from a neighbouring hold. From like one of the neighbours, and getting a druid to come and help, getting some militia to come and help from Daggerford, even going all the way to Lord Alorfindar and getting him to teleport his way in. He actually, in the end, wasn't needed, but given he had the timings meant kind of epically and dramatically, he was arriving very much as the battle was reaching its peak in terms of the timers on stuff. So he actually arrived after they'd won. Or rather after the orcs, led by their half-orc captain Halir, had retreated. Only a couple of squads of orcs survived to escape out of a strong company's worth. We got to use battle system in that. The adventure, I think, wisely says, if PCs are directly involved in a combat, because the numbers aren't massive, you're often looking at like 10, 20 aside, just use D&D. But when the characters weren't involved, we used battle system, and that was fun. It was really nice to get using a 1 to 5 scale. I think it was the way they suggested. But yeah, that was really fun, and it's kind of fun getting. They had a bunch of powerful NPCs who are higher level than them. They were a bunch of first, second, third, all three of those levels covered actually, and they had a bunch of higher level characters helping them as well, who they controlled when they were in action. And I think, they directed the defence. We had lots of Zulu references. And yeah, it was an interesting thing in terms of a very different vibe, like compared to even in the same adventure, scouting the woods and fighting orcs there, going to the fallen monastery of Ilmater, and doing a level of a dungeon crawl there. That's where the Blood Ooze killed Gren, in fact. We notice here, by the way, Kaitamar, I don't know if I mentioned this time. He has 1 death and resurrection. He was resurrected by Sir Isteval, the paladin. No, not by Sir Isteval's friend, who's a cleric of the same god, who's like a 9th level cleric. Raised dead once as a favour at the end of them having gone to the Lizard Marsh, and albeit failed. That's the thing, that wasn't a necessary loss condition. It's interesting seeing players, succeed or fail, characters die and stuff, but when you are behind the curtain and you know what could happen or could not happen. So the orcs were at Bowshot Caves because the players dallied on that. Crail Hold would have fallen 9 days after they arrived because of them not having got to it. If they hadn't gone to it and they didn't have to, there's no requirement there, it would have fallen. Equally, Meechan, they're now like, you don't just accept help from random people who don't ask for any money. There's a lesson there somehow. Meechan, they didn't have to fail in that. That it would have been quite possible to reject Meechan at some point, and if Meechan had been tracking them to stop her getting it, it was possible. But it didn't happen, and now it has effects. The same with the Duergar capturing them. The Duergar now have information on this dwarven ruin which they were looking for. We'll see what happens. So seeing these things branch out and have impacts is good. One thing I think that helps that is precisely the fact that there are many jobs and options, rather than this being a case of like, look, this is the main story. And this is something that fits into character stables, the fact that players have multiple characters who are on different timetables. Here we can see some opinions there. Murder Meechan on site. But yeah, we can see here, that was because there is a time-locked event involving Meechan in town. But here we can see the jobs and rumours and so on. I've done three. I had a spring set here which I'd update as we went, but you can see I've got militia jobs, which are things that the militia want someone to do. There is some sort of reward and deal from them. There are rumours, and then there are other jobs which, you know, aren't militia jobs. They're not ones, so they can't take militia horses for non-militia jobs, for instance, and they will have worse access to reinforcements. You know, Crowhold was a militia job; they could go and get help, and the Duke, it was, you know, his vassal, so they had a natural desire to help. Whereas, say, investigating the fallen monastery, you know, the Duke and the militia, who are technically separate organisations, are not going to be that interested. So yeah, you can see Gwydion wants them to get Selûni's Tear from the Silver Swamp near Phandalin. Under here, yeah, the continuation of Bowshot Caves, because that deal is open. Basically, that silver ore had washed out, and you know, they were like, the Duke and the town were like, why don't we investigate, see if there's some good money there. The villagers of Rock Island, that's what they're doing now. Strange Shapes by Night, and then so Isteval, well, wants to look into the elemental altars, and there is a reward for an accomplice to the Red Wizard who was involved in the theft at the Flotian Estates. So we've got a bunch of things which they can do. Two of those are active, obviously, at the moment. Rock Island here and Gwydion here. That means the parties are in different places. It means they are constrained in terms of what they can do. It means that the world develops around them. These are fairly small examples of stuff I've pushed inverted commas on in terms of timetables. I obviously won't say about anything else that might happen timetable wise, but you know, a few orcs turning up makes it difficult. But of course, a character can die. A second level character can be killed in a combat, in a fairly parity based combat with orcs. You know, 5 orcs versus 5 PCs or whatever, if that's what happens. Equally, certainly the Crowhold, that would have been a lot worse. But as it is, they got training out of it. That was their main reward. They got some treasure too. But Sabrita, who's now a 4th level wizard, got training out of it. That's very valuable. You know, because that would have cost 1,500 or whatever, and potentially more depending on our house rule for wisdom or intelligence checks. So yeah, having these different things pushes the party towards engaging, I think, with the world as a world, and the story in terms of the things that happen as a kind of coherent whole that covers the world, that isn't the we're doing this story but does all these things. And so I think, you know, there's some campaign infrastructure that fits in here to do with multiple rumours and jobs, and things that take up time. So travel, observing travel, training time, recovery time from injury, because if you're knocked out, if you go 0 or below, even if you're above that, you're walking wounded until you have bed rest, basically, unless you have a heal spell, which is 6th level. So the idea that time is being taken up, and there are lots of things pressing. The Duergar are presumably interested in Illifarm. We already know there's orcs and there's dwarves there, or hopefully there's dwarves there, because there was rumour of dwarves being there. They've met orcs there, in fact, on a reconnaissance. They know there's elves in the woods beneath Illifarm, at the foot of Illifarm. Like, all these factions are interacting, and so time is ticking, and so the players need to prioritise things. So yeah, I found that helpful getting, and it takes multiple of those things rather than just telling the players there's lots of rumours and hoping they do stuff. For the content to be interesting, it has to be dynamic, and the things have to interact. Yeah, I think Rock Island Tower, they're currently doing scouting Illifarm. They decided to go back out there and find out more, because that seemed to be a thing that was drawing them. That is something they're interested in. They know there are factions coming together there. They know there's a big dungeon there or whatever, like as in the old ruins of the Dwarven Hold. They went there, they found one of the entrances and did defeat a group of orcs, but because they took a couple of walking wounded off it, a couple of people were knocked out, and they just concluded, most of that party was like 1st level as well. That was a weak party. They were like, we just can't do this right now, come back later. Of course, that means that whoever is there is going to be, the orcs at that entrance will be more prepared. They won't be caught napping as they were that time. A very good grease spell, though, which turned the tide of battle at a point where they thought they might have to flee and leave like dying friends behind. Grease spell that by Mystifius, I think, which made two of the 4 orcs who were left slip up. One was then immediately killed, and so suddenly they could swarm forward and deal with these guys, and then run away before any more orcs came out. That was one thing. We're in order of battle, though. I think the module I'm using, I'm basing it on N5 under Ilafan. That bit doesn't, infamous for its confusing maps, doesn't have strong order of battle information. It does have some, and there's also stuff that's implied. You know that if something, one room with orcs is 20 feet away, they're probably, or 30 feet away, they're probably going to hear. You know, there's some obvious stuff there, unless it says otherwise. Some comments on, because this is Rock Island Tower, you got a malfunctioning Modron who was summoned via this Ruined Wizard Tower's Modron summoning thing, a gelatinous cube, amusing trap, compressed gelatinous cube. That was, they realised was shining. There was things shining in front of them in a kind of access tunnel between two rooms in the wizard's basement. Yeah, did not clock that might be something bad. Yeah, it did not, yeah, it caused some trouble, knocked out a couple of them. But they defeated it, and their surviving light footman, one of them was killed, their surviving light footman, I've said, can begin levelling and become a henchman based on his great victory in that he killed the gelatinous cube. You'll notice I give bonus XP per the optional rule in the 2E DMG, which is in many ways not a very good book, but for class-like actions. And this is something where I think this is a quickly and easily replicable version of Gary's 1E DMG recommendation of grading players. You know, A grade players keep 100% of XP they would have, etc., and their training is kind of set in a particular way, and it affects that kind of nexus of activities. Here, rather than that, they get bonus XP for doing stuff their class would do. I also give bonus XP for keeping journals, which does scale. It does mean that once you're 9th level, as I discover in my high level playtest for No Art Punk 3, you get like 3200 XP. I'm actually okay with that. 2.5% of the next level for just keeping your party appraised of stuff is something I'm kind of willing to pay for, basically, to motivate useful behaviours. But yes, that may be seen as weak and indulgent. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, you got treasure here. Oh yes, Mo went forward to rescue Mastifius, and it turned out the shiny new gauntlets he had were in fact gauntlets of fumbling, which have, like, I think each hand has a 50% chance of slipping while you're holding something. So he tried to grab Mastifius, rolled 2d100, see if either of his hands stayed there, dropped Mastifius. And then the rest of this is just other stuff they've found. I don't, generally, I'll occasionally give someone a treasure amount when they ask, and certainly for coins, that's fine. But, you know, I don't generally give values beforehand. This is unbanked, so they haven't earned XP for it. If it gets back to their base camp, I don't actually tend to enforce town as the end point of treasure, but their actual base camp, you know, if they have one. So, and they don't always. Sometimes it might just be they go into the dungeon and then go home. But if they have a base camp, they get it to the base camp, and that's where the treasure is banked and will apply to all characters who would normally take a share who survive. Yeah, so anyway, you can see here, I'll go over these characters, I suppose coming to an end here, but these characters, as you can see, Sabrita, 4th level human wizard using the witch kit, has over 12,000 XP, 33 sessions on that character. The same player, B, also has Arun, who's played 6 sessions, and Ricky, who's played 1. Some of those overlap, so I think he has played like 38, that player's played 38 sessions or something of the 41. A, Kaitamar, also has Robin and Sir Percy. So you can see, again, though there'll be overlap between characters, that is 46 sessions equivalent. I've only played 41, so it can't be that he's literally played 46 sessions. And then, yeah, you can see people have multiple characters. And in terms of the levelling, 33, if I think of that as 17 sessions, and Gary thinks it's 3 to 6 sessions per level, for 3 levels, then that's actually not too bad. 17 full sessions to get 3 levels, that's just under 6. It's slowish, but it's on pace. I sometimes worry about that because you realise sometimes you're like, okay, so this guy has done 7 sessions and he doesn't have 2,000 to become a fighter. That's terrible. But it's actually 3.5 sessions. I guess. So you think actually a full session with decent treasure or a couple of big combats and a bit of treasure will get him there. This doesn't include prime requisites, but characters just don't always have prime requisites, so it doesn't really matter. A player will tell me if they do, if it's ever relevant. Yes, you can see Gaston is nearly capped out, getting to 3rd level. Not sure if yeah, and you can see Osling. Yeah, I obviously just was just adding without enforcing the cap at that point. That one of our early players who played for a long time, very good player. But yeah, and here Ilorfindar Jr., randomly generated name, the same name of literally an NPC in the setting we're in, so made him a relation, is nearing his 1st level because he's a specialist priest. This means he gets extra abilities, etc. But specialist priests, sometimes there's just no description or commentary at all in the 2e material on whether or not there's an XP penalty. There is, the Complete Priests does talk a bit about this, but often an example does not mention it either way, so you assume it's just the priest. So cleric levels 1500 XP for 2nd level, etc. But for the Fey Warden, it is 2000. So it will take him longer. We do have a Psionicist as well. I'm trying to think, specialist wizard enchanter, cleric of Romanos. That is not that's just normal cleric. Divinate Paladin, that's a kit who is like who is a specialist fighter, doesn't get to specialise in weapons but is very good at fighting. Archer, very good at firing arrows. Wizard Slayer Barbarian. Barbarians get stuff to do with like detecting illusions and stuff anyway if you use the Complete Barbarian's Handbook, which I think is decent. It's obviously rather than just making it a kit as they originally do, it does go back to, I guess, the UA Barbarian and the Dragon Magazine Barbarian, and also add stuff. I like it has some similar ideas to those 2 kits, those 2 versions of the Barbarian in 1st edition. But yes, the Wizard Slayer has more magical abilities. No Mouse Burglar, indeed. Cartographer, Fighter Thief, our only multi-class character. Bryn. Oh no, I lied. Dougal, who is with the group we haven't played for several months because of the time stuff. He is multi-class as well. Yes, I don't know if there's much else to say. We do have one character who's on 0 XP because though this player was present and his character's present, he was not actually able to play in the combat because he, as I sometimes do midway through a session, had to go and look after his kids. So on a measly 0 XP off 1 session. But yeah, I feel like okay with the leveling. I like the dynamism of the world. I'm finding I'm able to put more and more of the rules in place and make them work. And that's one thing that, as it's one of 3 proper AD&D campaigns I've got going at the moment. And this is the one with the highest session count, though the streaming stuff actually is just over 30 sessions now, it's about 40 sessions between all the stuff we've done, but Dark Sun is like 23 sessions or something, and this is and Greyhawk will be just over 30. So this is the longest running AD&D campaign, I guess, in terms of like one campaign continuous. And I've definitely found it easier to get the rules in, and I've definitely found it, and that means that as the cognitive load goes down on getting a rule right or in part of a world right, that I'm able to have more dynamism and more interesting stuff for the players to interact with, like more options for them to interact with, rather than being like, oh, okay, I'm struggling to even, when you think you first run D&D or any role-playing game, you're like, I'm just trying to run the session, okay? This definitely, feels like it's running and ticking smoothly, and I can continue to get the rules, because the rules are good. The rules are not there as sort of interesting guidelines to pretend to play a game, but they are actually there to structure a game, like a knight moving to, 2 forward and 1 left or whatever, 3 forward and 1 left. What an embarrassing failure of memory there. So yeah, the idea that that the cognitive load increases as that basic stuff clicks in it has been a big thing. I don't always get lots of time for prep. I kind of get prep when I can. The most prep I do is actually for designing adventures, because of the adventures we've played. The Spring Patrol was partly based, one part of it was based on something in N5. Twin Homestead, Svark Caves and Duergar Outpost is me. Rune Temple of a Monitor, Lizard Marsh largely drawn from another adventure. Bowshot Caves, me, Siege of Crowhold. The Crowhold itself, not the scouting stuff they did, but the siege itself is from Dungeon Magazine. Fallen Monastery of Ilmater, me. Scouting Ilafan, based on with some twists and stuff on N5. Silverwisp Swamp, me, using a map from I think the Neverwinter MMO, which is actually a hideous map. I need to make a fair copy that I actually don't hate. Rock Island Tower, me. So there's, you know, like most of it is me, and that's kind of what I prefer to spend my time prepping. The job list is fine, and that doesn't matter. And doing the admin of the character sheets is also fine. I actually find I tend to do that, and I'm happy to do that in all my games, because of the different. Basically, I'm going to put the XP count up, and the players keeping their own record is good, and the players will keep their own character sheets in this campaign, so they've got to keep it somewhere. But me having a count centrally is really helpful, I find. So yeah, beyond that, I don't have lots of time because I prefer to be playing than doing enormous amounts of prep. So I don't spend loads of other time on prepping this. But there's enough stuff moving, and there's enough adventures active in the world, things that the players can interact with, that also interact with each other and that are on timers in some cases, not in others. That I think there's content here for another 2 years, certainly at least. And I guess it's fun. And we've got some 4th level characters and 3rd level characters as well. But I think, you know, I would expect by the time I next do an update, so in a year or something, it'll be fun to see. There'll be some 6th level, probably some 6th level characters, and we're now properly into the kind of the full game, and we're approaching mid levels. And I think 6th level, you start to see with 3rd level spells and stuff, a lot of stuff open up. There's no reason organically why in a couple of years' time, there's no reason this couldn't be a high level campaign, and that's exciting too. An organic high level campaign. You've got your 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th level characters starting to do big stuff with domains, with the Underdark, with the planes, all these kind of the twists on the classic formula that are out there. So yeah, I will leave the link in the description, as I say. If you'd like to join, all are welcome. We've hit 8 players. We had a caller. It was fine. It wasn't particularly difficult. I think you generally could cope with maybe 10 players with a good caller. So that's only happened a couple of times though. So certainly there's space to join, the more the merrier. And I hope that this has been an interesting or useful reflection that you can apply in some small way to your own campaign. Till next time.